Your role here is over, so please just disappear already. Why is that? Don't you even understand that? This was said to me on the day of my father-in-law's funeral. Does she have any idea what I've been through taking care of him? My father-in-law had terminal cancer, and my mother-in-law asked me to take care of him. And she did so with a deep bow. Despite that, she left everything to me and just went out enjoying herself. Mom didn't do anything, did she? So what? It seems like Dad really took a liking to you. Wonder what tricks you used. Isn't that disrespectful to Dad? You only took care of him because you wanted his inheritance, didn't you? Maybe you've already received something. My mother-in-law looked down on me and ridiculed me completely. I couldn't take it anymore. That's not true at all. Hit a nerve? I don't care either way, but leave before you taint this funeral any further. Who's really tainting it? When I glanced behind my mother-in-law, there stood my husband. He must have heard our conversation but said nothing, just crossed his arms. I felt desperate. My husband was always busy with work and never involved in the caregiving. I thought maybe it was better to just cut ties if I had to feel this way. Hey? How long are you planning to stand there? Leave within the count of 10. Then my husband spoke up. Yeah, it's best if the useless one disappears quickly. My husband also thought so little of me. I understand. I naturally responded that way. And walked toward the entrance of the funeral home. But right after that, my husband, Tom, hit his mother with some shocking words. And just like that, the situation flipped on its head. My name is Yvonne Norman, and I currently live as a homemaker in my in-laws' house. But I haven't been living here since the beginning of my marriage. I married Tom 2 years ago. At that time, I was working in product development for a cosmetics company. Ah, a lip balm for men? That's interesting. Oh, yes. This was my first conversation with the man who would later become my husband, Tom, though I didn't even know his name at the time. Sorry, I haven't introduced myself yet. I've been appointed the new head of product development. My name is Tom. I'm Yvonne Norman. Ah, you're the one. I've heard about you. I hope it's good things. Of course, all good things. The first impression was a good one. He was very easy to talk to, and I could tell he was considerate in his conversation. I've been working at the company for nearly 13 years now. But I knew nothing about my husband at the time. What? Really? Yeah, I heard it too. When I asked a friend during lunch, it seems he was headhunted from outside and brought into our company. He seemed like a really nice guy. Lucky. I wish I could work with him too. From that day on, word about my husband spread quickly within the company. Female employees wanting to get closer to him would constantly approach him. And it was a daily struggle for me to ward them off because they were a nuisance. Thanks for always being there. You know, as a manager, you might need to be more direct with them. People like that will only take advantage if you don't. Got any grudges? What? You're making a really scary face. Oh, no, that's not it. The office is a place for work. If you want to pursue romance, you should do it on your own time after hours. Fair enough. After that, we started talking more and naturally became closer. Half a year after meeting Tom, he confessed his feelings to me. I always thought I was just a woman who lived for her work with no interesting aspects to my life. Of course, I accepted his confession. However, our relationship didn't go smoothly. Somehow word got out, and I became the enemy in the eyes of the female employees who were fans of Tom from the start. Are you okay? I heard you've been harassed by other employees lately. I'm fine. If I ignore them, they'll give up eventually. I was optimistic. Contrary to my hopes, the harassment only got worse as days went by. Gossip was the least of it, trash was put in my locker, and hurtful words were scrawled all over it. Eventually, I fell ill and started missing work. Did you come to visit me? Thank you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Sorry. I didn't want to worry you. I see. Maybe we're still not. He muttered something under his breath. Just wait here for a moment. Oh. Okay. Tom left, leaving his things behind, and was gone for about an hour. When he returned, he had a very serious look on his face. I instinctively braced myself. Will you marry me? He said, presenting a small box. Inside the box was a ring adorned with diamonds. Overwhelmed with happiness, I started to cry. Was it that bad? No, I'm really happy. Then. Please take good of me. And so, we became husband and wife. I became a homemaker after we got married. At the suggestion of my husband, Tom, so I wouldn't be harassed any further. I had no doubt that happy days would continue from here on. However, the problem was his mother's presence. It started from the time we went to greet her. Oh, so you're Yvonne. Pleased to meet you. His mother looked me over as if she was sizing me up. She was probably assessing me. I have something important to tell you, Yvonne. Yes, what is it? Since you're marrying into our family, you're not just going to obey Tom, but me as well. Then Tom intervened. Mom, that's no way to talk. Oh, why? Talking like it's some kind of threat. Right? His mother was seeking my agreement. Wanting to build a good relationship with my in-laws, I could only agree. By the way, where's Dad? Ah, he's probably asleep right now. Is he not doing well? Well, yes. I had heard a bit about my father-in-law from Tom. He had been prone to illness since his youth and had undergone surgery several times. And he was currently suffering from cancer. What caught my attention at that moment was his mother's reaction. Her response to my husband's question seemed like it was someone else's problem. I saw my father-in-law's face, but I couldn't talk to him. Sorry about my mom earlier. She's always been like that, so don't worry about it. Yeah. But what I'm concerned about is your dad. I saw him for the first time in a while too, and he was weaker than I expected. If there's anything, don't hesitate to tell me. I have the time. It helps to hear you say that. Thank you. And so, our married life began. At my husband's suggestion, we decided to regularly check on my father-in-law. I feel bad you have to go all this way. It's fine. Just seeing your dad looking well is enough for me. What about your mom? Ah. She went out with friends. What? Is it okay to be here alone? I'm feeling okay now. My father-in-law answered with a smile, but I wondered if it was normal to go out and leave a sick husband at home. Then, about a year after we got married, a call from my mother-in-law would significantly change our lives. It happened one night. My husband came home with a heavy sigh. Something wrong? I got a call from my mom. Let's talk in detail. We decided to talk in the living room about what happened. So, what's up with your mom? She asked if we could take care of Dad. Take care of him? But until now, wasn't your mom doing it? That's what I thought. But wait. Asking us to take care of him now, does that mean something happened to your dad? Then my husband had a sad expression. Actually, it seems like Dad's cancer is almost at the terminal stage. What? I didn't know until Mom told me either. Maybe Dad has been hiding it all along. To avoid worrying us? It's something Dad would do. But what should we do? Did she say anything else? She asked if you could take on the caregiving. I see. She probably thought I had the time since I'm a homemaker. Indeed, it wouldn't be practical to ask my husband, who's in the prime of his career. I hesitated at first, but I was also uneasy about leaving the caregiving solely to my mother-in-law. Sorry. It's my family's issue after all. I'm part of the family too. Right. I was thinking of going to my parents' house this weekend. Understood. And so, we went to my husband's parents' house. My mother-in-law greeted us, but she was smiling at me for some reason. I had a bad feeling about this. About the caregiving thing. Yvonne has agreed to it. Is that so? That's good. Right, Dad? Yes. And there's one more thing I'd like to ask. What's that? Considering the long distance, it must be hard for you to commute back and forth for caregiving, right? It's true, even under the best conditions, it takes 3 hours to get to my in-laws' house. That's a 6-hour round trip. It is hard, yes. I could almost guess what my mother-in-law was about to say next. So, why don't you all move in here? Live with us. But I have work, and considering the commute, that would be difficult. Then my mother-in-law quickly replied. That's okay. As long as Yvonne is here, that's enough. What? You're okay with that, right? She must have known about my husband's job and understood that living together would be difficult. This meant she had planned for this from the start. I thought so. Either way, I was already prepared. Yes. Then, we're counting on you. I know it's a lot to ask, but please take care of it. Sure. Later, my belongings were delivered promptly. Are you sure this was okay? Yeah. I want to do what I can for Dad. Understood. If you have any troubles, let me know. I'm counting on you. After seeing my husband off, I started to organize my belongings. That's when the harassment from my mother-in-law began. Your room will be the one in the back on the first floor. Ah, okay. When I headed to the room as instructed, it turned out to be just a storage room. This is a storage room? What? You have a problem with this room? There's no window in here. If you have complaints, you can stay outside. What will it be? Okay, I understand. This will be fine. There were other unused rooms in the house, but I wasn't allowed to use them. They were locked with padlocks and were inaccessible. Furthermore, on closer inspection, those locks seemed to be newly purchased. They must have set it up anticipating my arrival at my in-laws. Come to the living room in an hour. Wait, please! My mother-in-law left without responding. All I could do was get to work. While covered in dust, I moved the garbage and somehow made space. Sweaty and exhausted, I finished cleaning a minute before the agreed time. I headed to the living room, worn out. I'm done. Oh. Finished already? Then I have another job for you. First, could you sweep each room? Please wait. I need a break. What are you saying? You're young, you'll be fine. We're letting you live here, so do what needs to be done, okay? Are you going somewhere? I have plans to meet someone. So, I'm leaving the rest to you. With that, my mother-in-law left. All I could do was watch her go. For now, I just had to do what I could. As I started cleaning the rooms, my father-in-law appeared. Dad. Are you okay to be up? Barely. Even so, it must be tough for you, right? Thank you. At that moment, my father-in-law seemed somewhat lonely. Did Mom go out? Yes, she said she had an appointment. I see. She wasn't like this in the past. Then, he began to tell me about the old days. In his youth, my father-in-law had run a small company. The business was doing well until he fell ill. At first, my mother-in-law supported him in various ways. It was okay until then, but my health wasn't improving, and we decided that my company would be taken over by my brother. I see. But my wife wasn't satisfied with that. She wasn't on good terms with my brother. What did mother-in-law do after that? Then she started ignoring me more often. She acted normally in front of Tom, though. It seems my father-in-law had been struggling for a long time. I can understand my mother-in-law's feelings to some extent, but that doesn't justify neglecting my father-in-law when he's unwell. That must have been hard for you. But I've gotten used to it now. That's terrible. Sorry for talking about such boring stuff when we could be spending this precious time differently. Not at all. Thank you. I decided to talk to my husband about it. After hearing from my father-in-law, I couldn't just ignore it. I heard this from Dad. Did you know about it? Yeah, sort of. Then why don't you say something to your mom? I lost my temper at my husband's seemingly indifferent response. Don't get so mad. I've been thinking about it. Thinking? Like what? I can't give you an answer right now. What's that supposed to mean? I was disappointed in my husband. He didn't seem to be concerned, even though his own father was in such a state. Just trust me for now. How can you say that? Can you tell Dad that there's no problem on my end? You should say that yourself. Please. The seriousness could be felt even through the phone. Well, okay. But in return, come by to see us, will you? Sure. Then, I went to tell my father-in-law about it. Tom has a message for you. A message? Yes. He said there's no problem. I see. Seems like things are going well then. What does that mean? Just then, my mother-in-law returned. I'm home. The cleaning she asked for wasn't finished yet. I hadn't expected her to return so soon. Sorry, Dad. I'll be going back now. I hurried to the living room. Welcome back. I'm home. So, how's the cleaning? It's not done yet. What have you been doing all this time? You're really useless. Sorry. Instead of apologizing, get moving. Keep cleaning until I say it's good enough. I really thought I had done it this time. Anyway, I kept working. My mother-in-law would come by occasionally to nag. I wonder why Tom married someone like you. No matter what she said, I ignored her, which seemed to upset her, so she kicked a bucket towards me. What are you doing? Oh, sorry. I didn't see you there at all. Arguing would only make things worse, so I followed my mother-in-law's orders. But this was just the beginning. One morning. It doesn't taste good at all. Is that so? It's also too bland. Dad can only handle light flavors. As I explained, my mother-in-law suddenly threw the bowl she was holding at me. Why should I have to eat the same food as that deadbeat? Are you trying to spite me? I didn't mean it that way. If you serve something like this again, I won't let it go so easily. Remember that. With that, she went back to her room. I cleaned the dirty table and changed my clothes before heading to my father-in-law. I heard some noise. Are you okay? Yes. Really? What? You don't have to lie to me. Reassured by his words, I ended up pouring my heart out to my father-in-law. Thanks for telling me. But please, believe in Tom. Yes, I will. His words made me decide to trust my husband once again. Then, my father-in-law asked me to do something. It was to leave a large envelope on the table. I wouldn't understand its significance until after a sad event. I did as my father-in-law asked and left the envelope on the table. When I came back from the bath, the envelope that should have been there was gone. That means my mother-in-law must have taken it. Wondering what was inside, I noticed I had a call from my husband. Hello? Yvonne, did you pass the message to Dad? Yes, I did. But when are you coming over next? I should be able to make it this Saturday. Got it. I'll be waiting then. The thought of seeing my husband after several months made me so happy I could dance. There was so much I wanted to talk about. I was really looking forward to Saturday. But when my husband arrived, he seemed uninterested in me and went straight to my father-in-law's room. Sorry, but I have something important to discuss now. Okay, understood. Thanks. About 30 minutes later. My husband came out of my father-in-law's room. Did Mom take the envelope Dad asked you to leave? Probably. It was gone after I put it on the table, but I don't know where she took it. I see. Mom said she wouldn't be back until the evening, right? That's what she said. Then he went into my mother-in-law's room. I didn't know why he was doing that, so all I could do was wait. When my husband came out, he was muttering to himself. Sorry, but I have to go somewhere important now. So, I'm leaving Dad in your care. Oh. You're leaving already? You just got here. It's really important. Please understand. How am I supposed to understand with that explanation? He didn't give any more details. Following this, I started to feel unwell more frequently. Waking up in the morning, I felt heavy and didn't want to do anything. But my mother-in-law wouldn't wait. How long are you going to sleep? I'm not feeling well. That's not my problem. Get up and prepare the meal. I was forcefully pulled out of bed by my arm. I couldn't think clearly, so I couldn't prepare a proper meal. You're really useless. Can't even do this properly. I became mentally weaker, realizing that this situation was bad. One day, as I was seeing off my mother-in-law and doing housework, I heard a thud. It was apparently from my father-in-law's room. Rushing over, I found my father-in-law had fallen from the bed and was already unconscious. I've called an ambulance. I kept calling to him until the ambulance arrived. He was taken to the hospital, but despite the efforts, my father-in-law passed away. He had terminal cancer, but he had greeted me as usual that morning. I could only stare blankly at my motionless father-in-law. Dad! My husband, who rushed into the hospital room, was more frantic than I'd ever seen him. It can't be. Where's Mom? I don't know. She left before your dad fell, and I haven't gotten any response from her. I see. Yvonne, just hang in there a little longer. What are you talking about? Leaving those words behind, he left the room. I thought to myself, is this all my husband cares, even after his father's death? Left alone in the room, I reminisced about the time spent with my father-in-law. Though it was less than a year, he always cared for me. Those memories flashed before my eyes, and tears began to flow naturally. My mother-in-law didn't show up that day. Where have you been? It was when I decided to return to my in-laws' house after spending a night in the hospital. My husband, who was supposed to have left, came back. He seemed lost in thought, not fully present. Hey, are you listening? Ah. What were you saying? That's enough. When I arrived at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law was nonchalantly drinking tea. What are you doing here? I'm drinking tea. Why didn't you come to the hospital? I left a message on the answering machine. It was too much trouble. I couldn't believe it. Her husband had passed away, yet she seemed to feel no sadness at all. I felt my fists clenching. How could someone be so cruel? My hatred for my mother-in-law kept growing, but there was no time to dwell on it as preparations for my father-in-law's funeral were quickly underway. My mother-in-law left everything to me and my husband, doing nothing herself. 4 days after my father-in-law passed away, the funeral was held modestly. Throughout the funeral, my mother-in-law seemed unbothered, laughing with friends as if she felt no grief for my father-in-law. This should not be happening. And after the funeral was over, when I was taking a moment to breathe. Can I talk to you for a sec? What is it? Suddenly, my mother-in-law said something outrageous. Your role here is done. Please leave as soon as you can. Why? Don't you understand? You are just a substitute for me. Thanks for handling such bothersome caregiving. It really let me enjoy my time. Did she have any idea how much I've been through taking care of my father-in-law? She left everything to me and went about enjoying her life. I was on the verge of exploding with anger towards her. You didn't do anything, did you? So what? It seems like Dad really took a liking to you. Wonder what tricks you used. Isn't that disrespectful to Dad? You were only taking care of him because you wanted his inheritance, weren't you? Maybe you've already received something. My mother-in-law was completely looking down on me and mocking me. I couldn't stand it anymore. That's not true. Hit a nerve? Doesn't matter. Before you taint Dad's funeral any further, just leave. I wondered who was really tarnishing it. Suddenly, I turned my gaze behind my mother-in-law, and there stood my husband, Tom. He must have heard our conversation but said nothing, just crossed his arms. I felt desperate. Tom was always busy with work and had never been involved in the caregiving. I thought about cutting ties if I had to feel this way. Hey? How long are you planning to stand there? Leave within the count of 10. Then Tom spoke up. Yeah. The useless one should disappear quickly. So, Tom also thought so little of me. Understood. I naturally responded that way. And walked toward the entrance of the funeral home. But right after that, Tom hit his mother with some shocking words. There's no need for Yvonne to leave. What? After all, Yvonne hasn't done anything wrong. In fact, it's thanks to Yvonne that Dad could live this long. What are you saying? You just said to disappear. I did say that. But it wasn't meant for Yvonne. Mom, it's you. She must have never thought those words were directed at her. My mother-in-law was speechless. Why me? You think Dad and I didn't know? Besides, it's you who wants the inheritance, right? Do you have any proof to say such a thing? Of course, I do. This. What Tom showed was the envelope handed to him by my father-in-law, which I was familiar with. Inside this envelope is Dad's bank account. You've been using the money Dad was supposed to leave behind, haven't you? It's all recorded. I couldn't help but be shocked. I had no idea such a secret was hidden in that envelope. But he's gone now, so what's the difference if it's sooner or later? Tom sighed deeply. You really don't understand anything. What do you mean? You'll understand if you see this. What Tom held was an envelope labeled as a will, different from the one before. Could it be? This is what Dad left behind. Tom opened the envelope and began reading the will. It stated that all of the inheritance was to bypass my mother-in-law and go directly to Tom. You're leaving nothing for me? I have a right to the inheritance too. Normally, yes. But you've been withdrawing money from Dad's account without permission, haven't you? So what? By doing that, you've lost, Mom. Huh? Dad had me take steps to exclude you from the inheritance. Oh, I see. That was the plan. I finally understood what Tom and his father had been scheming. Now my words shifted the target to me. So, this woman did something, didn't she? Truly despicable. In a fit of anger, my mother-in-law tried to pull my hair. Stop it. In vain, Tom brushed off her arm. Let me explain. I was the one who left the envelope on the table. According to Tom, it was to trap you, right? Yes. Exactly. Trap? Blinded by money, Mom, you fell right into it without realizing what would happen. My mother-in-law collapsed to her knees and fell silent. Perhaps she was in despair after learning the truth. But one question remained. I couldn't just ignore why he had been so cold towards me. Why didn't you tell me? Because Dad told me to. Your father? The plan was originally his idea. He wanted to deal with Mom before he passed away. Also, if she hadn't taken any money, she would have been left the inheritance as planned. I had no idea. As for you, Yvonne, Dad didn't want to put any more burden on you. That's when I remembered how many times my father-in-law had told me to trust Tom. Tom wasn't trying to abandon me. He was just awkwardly trying to protect me, honoring his father's words. Feeling grateful and apologetic towards my father-in-law and Tom, my mother-in-law slowly stood up. I instinctively braced myself. Why do I have to suffer like this? It's totally unfair. Staggering, she headed towards the hall where my father-in-law lay. Hey, isn't this bad? Definitely. Let's stop her. My mother-in-law started wailing in a voice barely audible and began hitting my father-in-law, who couldn't move or speak.
What are you doing?
Frozen by the scene, I knew this couldn't be allowed. Leave me alone.
Just stop it, please. Help me.
Ah. Tom and I managed to pull my mother-in-law away from my father-in-law and took her outside the funeral home.
Enough now. Do you even realize what you've done? That man deserved to die. Don't be ridiculous. Tom. Calm down.
Somehow, I managed to calm Tom down.
Anyway, we're going to have Mom leave the house.
What right do you have? I'm Tom's wife. We decided to have the police take her into protective custody for the time being. It was clear that someone who would harm a deceased person couldn't be left unchecked. I'm sorry for not believing you until now. No, I also thought I should have talked to you. I'm sorry. After the cremation, the three of us returned home. After the funeral, we discussed our future at home. For the time being, we decided that my mother-in-law should leave this house. It turns out she had a sister, who came to pick her up when she left our home. This was our last act of kindness towards her.
Don't think you can do this to me and get away with it. If you have that much energy, you'll be fine.
Yeah. Looks like you won't have any problems without the inheritance.
You should go to hell.
With those words, my mother-in-law left. She was truly my mother-in-law until the very end. Some things just don't change, do they? And so, my mother-in-law would indeed go to hell. Her own words came back to haunt her. Though she relied on her biological sister, they didn't get along, and she was kicked out just a week after moving in. Without a proper job ever in her life, my mother-in-law was indeed experiencing hell. That's what she gets. Well, hopefully, she learns her lesson from this. I hope so. We continue to live in the house we inherited from my father-in-law. Moreover, there's a new life growing inside me. This might be the last gift from my father-in-law.
We'll continue to walk together as a family, in harmony.